Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the MtG, and for us budget players, it's an almost constant struggle between maintaining wildcard resources and trying to have the very best decks. And oftentimes it really comes down to having more flexible cards and, more often than not, making sure we have the right cards, because with standard so big and so many sets being released, it's nearly impossible to have every single card. So having the right ones becomes really paramount. And now is the perfect time, as we come towards the end of the Final Fantasy season, to look back at those cards and see which ones are worth a wild card add to your collections and which you might just want to let go. But before we get into all that, this season as we explore the worlds of Final Fantasy, the Stronghold is lucky enough to have one of the crystalline entities staying with us. And we want you to know, not only should you be subscribed to the Stronghold right here on YouTube for great content like this, but you should also be subscribed to our content available on Patreon and Twitch, so that you never miss out on a thing. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. Alright, so what do you say we start the conversation with something that just has not worked out as well as I, for one, would have hoped. That, of course, is the Mythic 3-mana Buster Sword. It turns out this is just not quite as busted as I had hoped. We're just not seeing it impacting standard at all, and I think there's better things you could be doing with your Mythic wildcards. For instance, Lost Jite is going to be in standard for about another year and a half until the January 2027 rotation, unless something unexpected happens. And I think that's just a better use not only of your Mythic wildcard, but your in-game mana and resources. So if you haven't seen that, maybe check it out and let Buster Sword slide on by if you don't already have one. But don't despair, the Magic 8 Ball does say yes to a few staples from this set. For instance, the Regalia, a legendary artifact vehicle, is an absolute ramp beast. And while ramp decks aren't really all the rage in standard at the moment, it is certainly a theme that Wizards and the Arena team continue to focus on. So its day may be yet to come, and certainly as a one-of for your Brawl decks, I think this is a must-have. And as time continues to march on, Starting Town is looking more like a standard staple than a budgetary concession. So if you end up with 2, 3, maybe even 4 copies of this, I would not feel bad at all. Even with the Shocklands coming confirmed in Edge of Eternities, this is still a piece that looks to have a lot of work to do over the next couple of years in Standard, and having in your collection is going to help a lot. The green Landfall decks have certainly been all the rage here over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and certainly Tifa Lockhart is center stage in those decks. But I'm going to be honest with you, between the legendary status, some shortcomings on this, like so easily removable, I think Tifa is more of a meme deck that is not going to stand the test of time. However, I think Saz's Chocobo is a card worth crafting here. It gets you that landfall capability, and it doesn't have the all-in effect that Tifa does. You don't have to build your deck around Tifa. You could literally just throw Chocobo into any green deck and have a pretty solid chance of improvement there. And as an uncommon, it really doesn't get much more value-oriented than that. And throwing that copy of the Regalia that we talked about earlier into that deck with the Chocobos, now you have an opportunity to throw an additional land onto the battlefield each turn. While Saz's Chocobo does fit very nicely into any green deck for the foreseeable future, there are some cards that make a Chocobo focused deck significantly better. One of those being Saz himself, and of course Traveling Chocobo. Both of these cards are pretty readily available through the Final Fantasy jump-in packs, whose future is not really clear at this point. Actually, by the time this is released, the Final Fantasy jump-in event will have been scheduled to end. Maybe it gets extended, I don't know. Maybe it gets rolled into the larger, more traditional jump-in event. I'm really not sure what's going to happen there. But hopefully everybody has a copy or two of this. If you don't, I think if you can't get them easily through jump-in, crafting one copy of each of these is certainly reasonable if you want to play that Chocobo deck, or maybe some sort of brawl deck with a Chocobo theme or sub-theme. But I wouldn't go hog wild on these and really craft a bunch. The long-term trajectory of the Chocobo deck is still very questionable, particularly in a standard so large and so rapidly growing. The last big topic I want to cover in this video, because anytime we as budget players see tutors, we need to take notice. For instance, both of these are white. Delivery Moogle, a 4-mana 3/2 flyer, also lets you tutor up, either from your library or your graveyard, an artifact card with mana value 2 or less, reveal it and put it into your hand. Really solid card. There's just so many 1 and 2 mana artifacts, and even the occasional 0 mana artifact. And for an uncommon, getting additional copies of those, particularly if you're doing something like the previously mentioned Mythic Lost Jite, which I remember, I believe I recall that it is a 1 mana artifact. To get additional copies of that effectively in a deck for an uncommon wild card, fairly significant. Similarly, From Father to Son lets you tutor up a vehicle card and put it into your hand. If this spell was cast from your graveyard, put that card into the battlefield instead. So yeah, it has a 7 mana flashback on that. But for 2 mana and a rare potential wild card, to have a second copy of all of your one-of vehicles and things like that is really quite significant. And that has long-term ramifications in your Eternal decks and things like that. I've even been wondering if this might have a slot in Greasefang. I haven't had time to test that yet. If any of you out there have, please let me know. There is absolutely no denying that Vivi and Yuna have both made their way into at least noteworthy competitive decks. But I tend to hesitate before recommending Mythics for crafting, mostly because budget players may get as few as 1 playset of Mythics for an entire year. That having been said, these might be on your radar. And I think it's also worth noting that any conversation about bans in Standard, these are going to be part of that conversation. And while if these cards get banned, you will be compensated with wildcards according to your collection, any other cards that you crafted for that deck that may be less useful or arguably not even playable are unlikely to be compensated. So my best suggestion is to look over your lists and craft carefully. Similarly, Final Fantasy gave us at least 2 noteworthy potential budget decks, one being a Garnet Saga in Selesnya colors, and also a Rakdos deck built on the idea of Wizard's tokens and general removal spells. One of the downsides, and there are many, of having so many releases in a year is that the seasons tend to be so short that it's really hard to test and vet a budget deck sufficiently. So at the moment, I'm holding off recommendation on this, and we will talk about them again when we do the budget deck tier list with the Edge of Eternity season in probably about a month or so. So there it is, guys. Those are my thoughts on what is craftable towards the end of the Final Fantasy season, what's proven itself, and what has yet to do so. And now, of course, is your opportunity to get down in the comments and let me know what you think. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to thank my supporting patrons, because being a small content creator comes with big bills. And I just couldn't do everything that I do without their monthly support. Thanks, guys. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful in your arena experience, we have a few suggestions for what you could watch next.